Greetings, Arts Beatniks. It's the KC Arts Beat Report. I'm Patrick Neas, and today we are going to be talking to a gentleman here in Kansas City who puts on such wonderful and interesting choral concerts. And we have one of those to talk to you about today. It's happening on April 19th. But before we get to that, I'd like to please ask you to like this video. It really helps the algorithm. And please subscribe to the KC Artsbeat YouTube channel. Subscribe to our Substack. You can do that at kcartsbeat.substack.com and follow us on Facebook. I'd also like to thank Musica Sacra for its support of this conversation. And right now it's time to say hello to the director of Musica Sacra, Professor Timothy McDonald, who's professor of music at Rockhurst University. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Patrick, and hello, Artsbeat listeners.
Yeah, it's always great to talk to you. You always have such interesting things going on. And this concert on April 19th, I should say right at the top, it's going to be at 7:30 p.m. at Arrupe Auditorium on the Rockhurst University campus. And the big featured work is one I have never heard before. It sounds really interesting. The Dan Forrest Requiem for the Living.
That's right. It's a recent work, Patrick. It was completed in 2013, first performed the next year, 2014, and it has been very popular among choruses, symphony orchestras, chamber orchestras. There are a number of different instrumentations, and it's a beautiful work.
So, Dan Forrest, how would you describe his music? Is it tonal?
It's largely tonal, mostly tonal, no question about that. Mostly consonant music, with like most contemporary composers, there's some free use of dissonance, but unlike works back in the 60s and 50s and 70s, it's not like it's 95% dissonance. By far it's probably 98% consonant music, and he's got a real flair for lyricism, for just beautiful melodies. You mentioned the title, The Requiem for the Living. And if you are trying to see and listen to every traditional Requiem Mass, this is not the one for you. It's not a traditional Requiem Mass. There are some texts of the Requiem that are missing. He inserts some texts that are not traditionally from the Requiem Mass. It's maybe a little more related to the traditional Requiem than, let's say, the Brahms Requiem, which is not a Requiem at all, but uses, German biblical quotes to comfort the listener, and Brahms comforted himself upon the death of his mother. This also is a Requiem of comfort, where he kind of selects texts.
So, in addition to the traditional texts of the Requiem that he does use, what are some of the other things he's added?
Vanitas Vanitatum, which is Vanity of Vanities. And it is a text, I believe, from the book of Job. And it's one of the most, I think, attractive movements, but he does give a lot of very specific recommendations. He wants it sinister, and we try to perform it in a sinister fashion. And he also inserts in the final movement, the Lux Aeterna, he puts the text that you'll recognize: "Come unto me, all ye who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest," in English. Mm-hmm. And he even puts in, if you're doing this in another country, find a similar, text in your own language, not in Latin.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's a couple of digressions from the traditional Requiem. He also puts the Agnus Dei before the Sanctus, which wouldn't happen in a regular Requiem Mass.
Why do you think he changed the order?
I don't really know. he hasn't addressed that in the materials that I've seen. I kind of think, that one of the things, I think he kind of paces his movements, and the Agnus Dei is very laid back, and the Sanctus is a little bit more dynamic in its orientation. So I think he probably does that to, the first movement's fairly, staid and gentle. Second movement, very fast and sinister. Then the third movement, slower. Fourth movement, a little bit more intense, and the fifth movement, slower.
I see. Well, that Vanity of Vanity text, boy, that's one that everybody should have taped to their bathroom mirror because, I think a lot of people go through life not keeping that in mind.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah,
think that's kind of what he had in mind there. It's interesting because um, the who's the focus on? Well, the Requiem for the Living, those of us who are left behind, and this Vanitas Vanitatum, he overlays the Dies Irae text, the Day of Wrath, Day of Ire, the text from the traditional Requiem that really evokes the image of the Judgment Day. He puts that, overlays that on top of the Vanitas Vanitatum. It's kind of interesting.
yeah, it really is. And, I think it's a good message for these times we live in.
So
And
true. So
yeah,
absolutely true.
this is a work for chorus and orchestra, right?
That's right. And there are a couple of different orchestrations. We're doing the chamber version as opposed to the full symphony orchestration, and it calls for 8 instruments, and they're very diverse. There's a flute, an oboe, French horn, violin, cello, percussion, 7 different percussion instruments for one percussionist, and then harp and organ.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
so I mean, when we talk about instrumental color, boy, in this chamber version, he absolutely captures it. I mean, hearing the winds at one time and the strings at another time. He often has the harp and organ playing together, which you don't hear very often together. And the French horn, when it comes in, it's like a monumental moment.
wow. I just love the whole concept of a requiem for the living because actually, in a way, we're all headed to that place.
Right.
And so, yeah, we all need a requiem. Also, this sounds like kind of an admonishing kind of work, sort of a grab you by the lapels and wake up kind of piece.
I think there's some intent for that, particularly in that vanitas vanitatum, if you think about the meaning of the words. But at the same time, like, you don't really get the feeling that it's an admonishing requiem when you listen to the music. The music is gentle. It is not always, but I mean, largely gentle, reassuring. It's comforting in many, many ways, very peaceful. Another, boy, again, in our times, do we need peace and comfort?
We sure do. Yeah, this is coming right at a good time. This concert is going to be on April 19th. Let's hope nothing horrible happens between now and then.
Absolutely. And we all have that in mind, don't we?
We sure do. Now, in addition to this Requiem for the Living, you've also chosen a couple of Renaissance pieces. Do they comment on the Requiem or
Well, one in a way does. I guess in a sense you could say both of them do. The one that does kind of share a sentiment is Victoria's, Tomas Luis de Victoria's Spanish mystical composer. I think one of the great composers of the Renaissance, writes this beautifully, emotionally rich music. And it's O vos omnes, oh, all of you, has there ever been any sorrow like unto my sorrow? and listen and look at my sorrow. It's kind of all about me in a
Yes.
sense with the text, but it's very powerful music to the text. So that sort of goes along with it. That is in Latin from the great Spanish Renaissance composer Tomás Luis da Victoria, lived from about 1548, died in 1611, I believe. And then we're doing one in English, an English anthem by Orlando Gibbons, again, a late 16th century English composer, Almighty and Everlasting God.
How would you describe Gibbons' music? He was a contemporary of Byrd and
That's
Tallis.
right.
Is his music how is it distinctive from those two composers?
Well, interesting. Again, I think if anything, he's a little bit more like Tallis than he is like Byrd. When I do Byrd's music, like Victoria's, I feel a lot of emotion in the music, and he really sets it up that way. This piece is a little bit more structurally oriented, a little bit more like Palestrina, a little bit more like Tallis, where you hear the individual lines, and they're absolutely beautiful, but not necessarily passion filled. They reflect the order and structure of the time, and at the same time, when you listen to the music, when I feel, and I've been talking about this Requiem for the Living, I keep coming back to comfort, and and that there's comfort in this music.
Uh-huh. Yeah, getting back to Victoria just for a second.
Sure.
To me, Victoria's music sounds like the musical equivalent of the paintings of Thurbaran
Hmm.
or El Greco.
Right.
They are really dark
Yes.
colors, they kind of pull you in. You almost feel like you're in this wonderful sea of, dark color. I love Victoria. It sounds like a terrific, both of those pieces sound like a terrific pairing with this more contemporary work.
Well, and you mentioned Victoria. I just love performing Victoria's music, and it's roughly contemporary, just a little bit after Saint John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila,
Right,
who themselves are very reflective, and John of the Cross with the Dark Night of the Soul.
right.
Beautiful, beautiful works.
Another analog to Victoria is John of the Cross for sure.
Yeah, see, not everything's digital.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, bad joke.
Yes, no, this is true. Certainly not your concert, which is happening on April 19th. It's going to be live. It's not going to be recorded. You can hear it live April 19th at Arrupe Auditorium on the campus of Rockhurst University. And unbelievably, it's free. What a deal.
That's absolutely right. Thanks to a number of donors and the good graces of the Missouri Arts Council and whatnot. So we're very happy to do that. Most of the concert is the Forrest Requiem, and drawing a parallel. Patrick, you remember these works, the John Rutter's Gloria, his
Sure.
Requiem, his Mass for the Children. These are works that are contemporary works. They're a little dated now, a few decades old, but boy, when they came out, they took off like wildfire. And this is what the Requiem for the Living has done. It's found many, many audiences and a very, very popular piece.
Yeah, it sounds great. Tim, for people who want to support you, how can they do that?
They can do that by going to the Rockhurst University website, looking up Musica Sacra, and there is a link on there to support Musica Sacra by donation through our Rockhurst University Advancement Department.
So if you want to support the great work that Professor Timothy McDonald is doing, bringing this really wonderful choral music to Kansas City, please check that out. Tim, it's always great having you on the podcast, and I wish you great success with this concert on April 19th.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And I always appreciate being on here, and I always appreciate listening and communicating with the arts beatniks. I love that term. I just love that term.
Yes, we're the cool crowd.
That's
So
right.
we're the
Just like
cool
the beatniks.
cats.
Yeah, that's right.
And you've been listening to the KC Arts Beat Report. Again, please like this video, share it with a choral music lover you know, or just a plain old music lover, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our Substack at kcartsbeat.substack.com and follow us on Facebook. I'm Patrick Neas, and I'll talk to you soon.